Yeah, it's recording.
Okay, and this is March of 1991. Dear friends, it's February and I feel great. Winter is dead and gone until next year. The heart exults. Today the sky is slate and a fitful wind gusts to 30 miles an hour, and the temperature is chill with an edge. So high good spirits over winter's end might seem misplaced, though only if you did not know Fresno. Here, December and January might present a pleasant day, but the season is fraught with the possibility that a damp, cheerless fog might wrap the town sight and then stay cold, wet, sunless, day after week until February. But February always has beautiful days. Days of air so blue and crystalline that the Sierra Nevada, 40 miles away and hidden in smog most of the year, seems just down the road a few blocks. In February, there are cloudless skies and skies decorated with bright white bursts of cumulus, and skies like today of roaring wind and weather. I often find when writing these letters that I'm trying to dampen my spirits. The way I gush about life on Liberty Street seems too like silly Pollyanna, and I don't want to communicate that, for the elation I want to share is not due to some quirk of genetics of the sort that makes an idiot grin as he drools, or not solely. My life is found art. I open-heartedly take what comes out, but cultivate and husband to make daily living spiritually and materially and aesthetically pleasing. For instance, there's Tina. She was an adult student at the private institute in Bogota, Colombia, when I taught English there in the last half of 1970 after quitting the Peace Corps. When I fell in love with her, it was like the Sicilian thunderbolt described and portrayed in The Godfather. We had known each other only a few weeks and had been intimate a few days, and pow, thunderbolt. I said, Tina, I know I told you I was only fooling around and that what we were doing was only fooling around, but that was all a lie. We've been making love and I love you. Let's get married. She said yes. A week later, I was pacing the floor of the dingy apartment I shared with Jamie, another ex-Peace Corps expatriate. He was in the hospital with appendicitis, and I was alone at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., with a dialogue like a country and western song tracking over and over through my mind. I told her I love her, and it's true. Oh yeah, you can't get married, you're a bum with no prospects. I can't back out now. Yes, you can. How could you support her? When we go back to the United States, I'll get a job. Oh, come on. You just backed out of a sweet deal doing volunteer work for the UC Riverside archaeologists to secure a grant for graduate work. You consciously renounced that? Any intention to return to academia? You have no other goal? You can't marry anyone. Tell her it was a mistake. But I love her. So what? You've been in love before. You know that stuff about once in a lifetime is crap. You're still a young man, only 25. If you've fallen in love twice so far, you probably will again. Besides, if it's true love, if it's fated, if it's destiny, well then it will keep. The bottom line is, you're a bum and you can't get married. Well, maybe I'll get work here in Colombia. Oh, get real, man. You have no skills, you don't understand Colombian society or Colombians or even Spanish very well. More than that, if you stay here, you have to try and conform, and you couldn't do it. Tell her it was a mistake and leave. I already asked her to marry me. She told her friends I love her. She didn't trick me, into asking for marriage. It was a thunderbolt. I can't just tell her it was a little mistake. It doesn't matter what you tell her. Be as gentle as you can. Tell her anything, but don't get married. You promised yourself some time with no long-range goals, and marriage is long-range. You can't get married. But I asked her, and I was sincere. Oh yeah, sure, I was there. You were sincere, all right, but you've been a liar sincerely all your life. This is just once more. Tell her goodbye. Wrap up your affairs here and get out of town. How long would it take you? What's the quickest you could hit the road? Where could you go? I couldn't just tell her goodbye, but I could leave for a long weekend in Villavicencio in a couple of days, come back to finish work, close my contracts, and be out of my job in about a week and a half, then go to visit Roy at his Peace Corps station. Once there, I could figure out where to pass a few weeks until meeting up with Rick and the two Australians to head for the Amazon and travel around South America. Yeah, that's right. Tell her goodbye and run like a rat. Don't spare your feelings. You are a rat and worse. Call yourself all sorts of names. All men are jerks and you're just one of them. Only don't flinch back. Say goodbye. Do it. I did it. 2 weeks later, I was at Roy's place in a village in the coffee country near Cali. It was warm and pleasant, and I was going to stay until almost time to fly to the Amazon River. But a new contingent of Peace Corps volunteers arrived on the second day I was there, and plans changed. There was a welcoming party. I went, and all the new volunteers were women. I had a few drinks and, reflex action, made a pass, and the bold girl said, yes, fine, okay, let's go. Roy offered his Jeep and the use of his house for the night and the following day. For years, I had lusted for just such an interlude. She was quite attractive, and I like bold women, but something in her aspect hinted that one night could last forever. And having just learned with Tina that sexual union contains the seed of total commitment, loss of self, merger of souls, love, I did not want to be harangued by my alter ego so soon again. I said goodbye to my friend in the Peace Corps, and I hopped the bus. Now, many bus rides during my time in Colombia were thrilling and amazing, but I don't recall much of the ride from Cali to Popayan. I sat by a window gazing at the passing scene along the Pan-American Highway, but nothing called my attention from deep reflection. Since the end of 5th grade, when the beautiful 6th grader Linda Rinaldi had flirted with me so outrageously, I had been making passes at women. I'd made passes when I wasn't sure why, and when I knew why but had no place to carry on. For 15 of my 25 years, grade school, high school, military, college, and Peace Corps, I had made passes. I wasn't simply leaving Tina or that wanton volunteer. I was leaving a life. If I had not to jump the bones of every woman, well then what was life about? Lost in thought, I switched from the mainline bus in Popayan to an older, more rattly one to cross the central Cordillera of the Andes and descend to Garzon, deep in the valley of the Magdalena River. The secondary road was gravel but not full of jarring potholes, and my reverie was barely disturbed by the transition. It was a nice place for loss of self because, as a lone foreigner in a busload of mostly illiterate peasants who couldn't speak my language and knew nothing of my background, no one could tell if I was the sanest dude of all times or mind-blown crazy. It didn't matter that I was abandoning myself with no idea of what that meant or who I was. And all the while, the bus had been climbing, switchbacking steadily higher and higher. Suddenly my attention was outside myself. We had topped out somewhere between 12 and 14,000 feet on a level plain. Now this is an environment so different that it has its own name, like valley or plateau. It's called a paramo. The plants are all strange-looking things, as if props from the land that time forgot, or some such old dinosaur movie. There are no trees or rocks visible. Everything is covered with rank, thick moss and lichens, so dripping moist that the mist that turns to rain and back to mist must be a constant and integral part of this strange land. Odd and beautiful birds fly into and out of sight in the fluid atmosphere. A mysterious and unhinged and unimagined world is through the window of an old bus. Well, I think. No sense worrying about sanity right now. I'll just settle back and put off pondering myself until this ride is over. I spent the night in a boarding house where the road crosses the river, and in the morning I headed upriver toward San Agustin, a remote village and archaeological park, the site of many pre-Columbian stone effigies near the headwaters of the mighty river, and I planned to lay low for a while there. I bought a bus ticket, but the bus was not really a bus, rather a flatbed truck with benches, like church pews, bolted across the bed. There are no doors or center aisles. Each bench was open to the left and right, with only an armrest to save passengers from sliding out as the bus negotiated curves. Moreover, the bed was wider than the axles, so peering straight down you could not see the wheels or the road, which was particularly striking when the bus entered a gorge where the way was cut into a sheer cliff. The road was there, obviously, but all that could be seen over the armrest was a raging river 50 feet below. A lady 2 benches in front stood and began screaming in terror, screaming which continued for many miles after we left the gorge. When we reached San Agustin, I checked into the government tourist hotel, but they expected to be fairly compensated for screened windows and hot water, and since I had quit working earlier than planned and wasn't sponging off France and hoped to make the bit of cash I had see me around the continent, I opted for cheaper accommodations with holes for windows and all the cold water I could stand, plus meals and the food. Oh, look, Tina. Did it right now.
Det som sin älskade.
Yeah. I settled in. In the morning after breakfast, I got information from some locals and the tourist police, and I decided to walk 2 or 3 miles to Los Estrechos, or the Narrows, where the Magdalena, already a mighty river 25 or so yards wide, compresses to roar through a cleft in the rocks, barely a yard across. Thanks, Tina. I followed a mostly level road through the forest, bright sun playing hide and seek with tropical rain clouds to warm me, while twice light sprinkles at the very edge of threatening thunderheads cooled me off. Unknown birds and flowers and insects were all around, and I strolled along pondering if mere awareness of the marvelous world was enough to replace the world the life I had abandoned, and I was humming an old Peggy Lee song, "Is That All There Is?" in time with my thoughts, when I was arrested by a wonderful thing. Cattle passing earlier had left fresh cow plop that I had been unconsciously sidestepping for some distance when I came to a paddy completely covered in butterflies. There were 3 distinct species, 2 of iridescent blue wings and the third of blast-your-eyes gold. Perhaps they were laying eggs or feeding, but they constantly opened and closed their wings so that light and color scintillated across the turd. I stood in awe for long minutes. I knew the vision, at once ethereal and earthy, was a gift that would stay with me until death. When I walked on, it didn't matter if I never made another pass at a woman, or if I didn't know myself, or if I was crazy. I would simply walk with my senses clear, unclouded by worry and questioning, with the intent to not miss any of the paramos and screaming bus rides and living jewel turds. My second attempt to settle, but after some brief travel and a short time in Charleston, I understood for the first time that there was a temperature dimension that does not figure in the allure of a photograph. It was already cold. Not sure what to do, I called friends from the Peace Corps who lived on the East Coast, and this is fate. They were leaving together with their wives to vacation in West Virginia, and they invited me to accompany them around West Virginia and then go on to stay with one couple in Connecticut. Knowing West Virginia was too cold even in summer for me to willfully settle, I jumped at the chance. After they picked me up, the car's gas tank got holed by a rock in one of the back roads we traveled, so we spent the day camped in a junkyard field beside a mechanic's garage in a tiny mountain town. The weather was comfortable, grass and flowers grew between the wrecks, and there were 5 of us, so company, so the time was picnic pleasant. Nancy, a Western Canadian married to Rick, the guy I'd hitchhiked around South America with, had tarot cards and offered a reading. She said that I needed to have a specific question held in thought and that it would be a good idea to have a time limit in the question. So I asked, what will the next 12 months bring? And the answer was the Queen of Pentacles, a woman, an earthly woman. My heart soared at the sight of that lovely womanly card. Regardless of my true fate and regardless of the truth of the tarot, that was the fate I wanted. In Connecticut, living with Ralph, who had already treated me to camping on the beaches of the Sierra Nevada, and his wife Rebecca, I got work with Jamie, my roommate in Bogota, who was also living there. The job was on Long Island Sound, lifting pleasure boats out of the water before winter hit, and then I would sail south with Jamie in his refurbished Maine lobster boat. I looked for her all the time. We embarked in early December, out of Hell's Gate and the East River, past the Statue of Liberty and on to the open Atlantic, around Sandy Hook and on to the Inland Canal. And in a couple of weeks, a few days before Christmas, we were halted in North Carolina before Marlborough Sound by a blizzard small craft warning. Jamie had attended the University of North Carolina, and so he went to visit his friends, and I was alone on the freezer-cold small boat. I began to obsess and then panic. What if I missed the woman? I abandoned my friend and the plan to sail his lobster boat south to my heart's desire. Instead, I spent the last of my cash on a bus to my hometown of Delano, there to make my 3rd attempt at settling so I'd be ready when she came along. That's what brought me bolt awake one pre-dawn morning in March of 1974 with a fully formed plan in mind. Why wait on fate when I already met the Queen 3 times? Why not just go get her? Now, the last woman who'd struck me had married someone, probably on the day the cards were being read, so cross her off the list. But I had a P.O. box address for Tina, so I'd write to her and say, "Hi, if you're married, I wish you all the best, but if you're not, let's get married. I'm ready now." I'd wait a few months, and if she was married or the letter came back or there was no reply, I would try and find my first love through her parents' address from 8 years before, and if that didn't work out, I would travel to southern Mexico and seek a bride who would marry me quickly out of poverty. One way or another, the prophecy would be fulfilled before the end of summer. I wanted a Queen of Pentacles. I wrote first thing in the morning. Tina got my letter but waited almost 3 months to write back to say that she was not married, but that I was a big jerk with a lot of nerve and she would never marry me. I'm thinking, why bother to write back in that case? And I began to assail her earnestly, urging her to cast her lot with me. Very fortunate that life in Columbia can be very difficult for a single woman, and circumstances and the times combined to make her decide that taking a chance on life shared with me might be better than the hassle she was getting from family, friends, and business partners in Bogota. She booked a flight to California the day her visa came through and then caught the first available flight. She sent notice to me but came so quickly that she beat the mail. So when my phone rang about 11 p.m. on November the 24th, I wasn't expecting a call, and I hung up when no one responded to my too quick "hello, hello." It re-rang, and this time a kind lady told me not to hang up because she was helping Tina from Colombia use the telephone at the airport, and she was going to pass the phone to her. The Queen of Pentacles at LAX. I raced to Los Angeles, and we were wedded that very night, although it took the state and the church and Tina's mom a couple of weeks to recognize it. Tina, the queen of my heart, the thunderbolt of love. She's an organic, found art I husband and cultivate. Life is good. Peace and love. Eric.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Gosh.